Great. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I'm going to carry on as if we can. Yes, so my name is Steve Cole. I am policy leader at the National Housing Federation, and I'm going to talk today particularly about the Energisprong project, which I should just call up in front of you. So hopefully you can all see that. I seem to be now sharing my screen. And basically the program is, as Julianne touched on, Energisprong UK as a branch of the Energisprong project as a whole, which is otherwise known as Transition Zero. Its aim is to change the market conditions to make net zero energy housing a reality. And I'll talk you through exactly how we aim to go about doing this, but I think the principal underlying condition of this is the quote you can see on the first slide from Jan Willem de Groot, which is simply that when your target is net zero energy, everything becomes simple. Because often when we start to deal with retrofit and net zero programs, the focus becomes on the technical measure, it becomes on an individual element of a building or how you deliver an individual product, but not focusing on the whole strategic purpose of the subject, not focusing on how you actually get to this point and why you might want to do that. So that underlying drive is what underpins Energisprong in particular, and one of the key things that differentiates it is this very clear target that it sets out to deliver. So the challenge, again, Julian has touched on this, but the challenge in the United Kingdom and why we're looking at it is that there are roughly 20 million improvements which need to be conducted over the next 40 years. That is the equivalent of 500,000 improvements per year, or 10,000 improvements per week, or 1 improvement per minute. So basically, since this webinar started, the United Kingdom should have retrofitted 34 homes, 35 have just gone up 1 minute. So it's a very laborious process, one that continues, one that is always ongoing. So the underlying thought I think we had about this was to make net zero housing a reality, we need to move away from this existing practice, which is driven by short-term single retrofit measures and that don't necessarily achieve the level of efficiency needed to meet both policy objectives, so things like the European requirements around reducing carbon emissions, but also to provide, and perhaps more importantly, warm, affordable homes for people to live in. So Energisprong UK, we aim to change this, and we're taking what you could call a market transformation approach. This approach delivers fully integrated net zero energy refurbishment, but it supports it with a long-term performance guarantee that aims to make the whole solution commercially financeable and scalable. I think there's two sort of underlying changes in this. One is that these guaranteed net zero energy refurbishments, they're more attractive investments than piecemeal measures. You make all the change in one go, you make it for the long term, but also the way that improvement contracts are normally negotiated, particularly in England, we've got a very free market system, is to use, basically each side essentially writes a contract, they write the framework, and then the other side tries to maximize the benefit to their organization from the contract. So the contracting approach traditionally is about finding loopholes or areas where the contract hasn't specified as well and using those to try and return a little bit of extra money to the business or save money if you are the partner having the work done. So what Energisprong does instead is it uses a collaborative approach between the supply and the demand side to try and transform the refurbishment market. And partly this is about the issues that we continually find in the retrofit market around quality. So trying to get away from installations where measures don't work, get away from the sort of traditional problems that we've seen around that. So just the underlying history of sort of Energisprong in essence, as Julianne pointed out, it's a market development program that kicked off in the Netherlands in 2010. It's developed a volume deal on this performance-based procurement model. So what happens is the housing association, they basically get an energy performance contract from the contractor. So the contractor guarantees the performance of the property that they retrofit. They guarantee it over a 30-year period. And this provides surety for the housing association about what bills the tenant can expect to pay And that allows them to basically then leverage money through as a pay-as-you-save scheme, whereby they're able to reinvest the savings, a share of the savings on the tenant energy bill, into paying for the retrofit over the life cycle, over that 30-year life cycle. But the procurement is crucial. The guaranteed performance is crucial to that. The other key point, as Julianne points out, is it uses an industrial approach to whole house retrofit. So this is moving away from single measures. This is, we'll talk about this in a little bit more in a minute, but using an off-site manufacturer to create a new building envelope that is simply craned onto the property and installed. So you can see in the picture in the bottom, if I just move my the cursor arrow around it, you can simply see the new building envelopes that have been placed on these properties. You can also see a new roof, which is fully solar PV, and you can see sort of increased detailing around the windows as well. There's also an internal refurb. We'll talk about that a little bit more. The key sort of principles which underlie Energiesprong as an approach, there are 4 of these. So first of all, the guarantee of net zero energy refurbishments for a minimum of 30 years. Net zero energy as a term means that a house should not consume more energy over a period of 1 year. So in terms, and this is all thermal space heating, hot water, light, and appliances, it should not consume more energy than it produces. So that's net zero. It's not zero on the meter necessarily, because in winter you may use more energy. You may have to get energy off the mains grid because your solar panels might not be producing. But over the course of the year, it's net zero. This is more attractive than piecemeal measures because it's guaranteed to generate an extra income stream from the energy services as well. It brings the home to a higher standard than most new builds, but also you're able to often sell energy back into the grid and return money. So the results provide a very strong business case for financing and refurbishment. So that's the sort of assured quality in the financing. The second core principle is very much about the resident. It's to provide a non-intrusive, hassle-free approach in which the retrofit is delivered in 1 week and the occupants continue to live in the house during the refurbishment. So there's no decanting, no one needs to be moved into temporary accommodation. The residents are simply present for the whole time. This in part is delivered by using the off-site manufacture process, because what you do is you're able to essentially BIM model the property before you create the component parts. So you create the component parts based on the actual physical structure of the building rather than on a sort of hypothetical physical structure for the building. So there's very little surprise when you get out there. It also does require higher levels of on-site sort of management, but that's the cost in that is made up for in the time that you're able to deliver this in, and the fact that you're not losing out on rental income by decanting from the property. The third key principle is affordability. So the resulting guaranteed energy cost savings in the initial investment, they have to be covered because the net present value of the energy cost savings over the lifetime of the refurbishment set the price of the targeted installed solution. So basically, the amount of money that you are able to save the tenant on their bills, you give part of that is sort of fixed to the tenant, so they have a fixed energy contract that they use over the lifetime of the property. They agree to not use more energy than that. If they do use more energy than that, they pay for it. The energy performance contract is with the housing association rather than with the energy company, and they get a fixed tariff rate, and that includes, but that tariff rate means that money is still returned to the housing association, and that money is used to pay for the lifetime for the cost of the refurbishment. So it's a pay-as-you-save scheme. If any of you are familiar with the UK's Green Deal programme, which wasn't very successful, it's a variation of that sort of scheme. There's also some other elements that come into the finances of that. So it's important, essentially, that each scheme is based on the actual what the resident is currently paying, that the energy bill the resident pays is fixed against what they currently pay. It's guaranteed not to increase, but obviously there's actually a decrease in energy use, and that's where the capital comes from. The final principle is attractiveness. It's often overlooked in retrofit. The refurbishment package needs to be attractive to occupants. It needs to improve quality of life and the appearance of the house. To achieve this, the products must be made desirable. They must have an overall appearance of being easy. They must be fun. And that's not really how we currently sell refurbishment products. The high-quality design should make an energy-sprung property a lifestyle choice, and it should provide some sort of value uplift to the entire neighbourhood. So this is essentially about desirability. And one of the interesting things some of you have seen in the pilot in the Netherlands, or the initial programs in the Netherlands, is one of the big things that attracted the residents there, made them sign up for this program, was the promise of new kitchens. So you might be getting, 40, 50, 80,000 euro worth of energy improvement works, but it's a 500 euro IKEA kitchen that often unlocks it for the residents. So this is also about creating a product that is desirable. So how does the approach work? So fundamentally, the way that we retrofit houses is still in principle the way we would have done it 100 years ago. We essentially, we put some more render on it, we might put some new insulation on it, might change the roof, but it's still quite a lot of wet work. It's custom project-based craftsmanship, and what, as Julienne touched on, is we're looking to move to a much more industrialized product with quality sales, delivery process, and a fully integrated supply chain. So that's the principle of the shift. In terms of how it's been delivered in the Netherlands, what they've done is they're looking to move from a prototyping approach in the sort of 2013, 2014 to signing up for a really large deal, 111,000 homes as part of this. This is principally about getting scale into the market, so making it a viable market proposition for all the parties involved in it, because obviously changing the way that people contract and moving to sort of contractor guarantees and performance-related contracting means that there has to be sufficient scale in the program for it to be worthwhile for the contractors. So what you see in terms of the timeline in the Netherlands, if we move from left to right on the screen, is that the prototypes for terraced houses were developed in 2013. In 2014, this was scaled up to 1,000 pilots on terraced homes. There were also a few prototypes for 4-story houses. And then from 2015 onwards, what we're looking at is scaling up to mass market on terraced houses, scaling up on the 4-story house prototype, and also then looking at exploring a prototype for multi-apartment blocks. And from 2016, this is going to roll out on more of those types. So there's 3 key archetypes of buildings that are being looked at here. And this will be the same in the UK. You're looking at terraced houses, you're looking at 4-story houses, and you're looking at multiple dwelling units, multi-apartment blocks, whatever terminology you want to use. So things all probably between sort of 5 and 8 to 10 stories, something like that. So not high-rise. It's not getting there for high-rise yet. But in the Netherlands, one of the important things is they have recently signed a deal to deliver 100,000 homes through the combined volume of the housing associations there, and that gives sort of surety to the contractors. That allows them to be able to get involved in this process, and also allows them to make all parties to make investment in these early, more expensive prototypes in order that they can see the return that they're going to get out of that. So you can see here some of the variations in the different stages, and apologies that the pictures aren't as good as they could be, but you can see on the left-hand side, this is the very early model. Version 1, it took 2 weeks to fit. You can see there's this box on the outside of the building is one of the interesting elements of it. It's essentially about taking the component heating elements, the air source heat pump, metering systems, all these, and taking them out of the building and putting them on the external environment to make it easier to access, but also making it easier to replace these parts. Part of this is simply around trying to make these products more efficient. One of the questions that's often been asked by the Platform 31 group is how can a car engine, something as complex as a car engine with so many moving parts and differential elements, be smaller and cheaper to manufacture than a standard boiler. So this is the sort of trying to take that production process over. You see the version 2 in the middle, which I'll highlight now. That's when it got down to 1 week. And you can start to see the finishing is a bit better, it looks a bit slicker. Again, there's still some issues about sort of roof height and so on. And then finally, you can see this version 3, which is a sort of hyper prototype, I'd imagine, where it was done in a 1-day retrofit. That's not something that would be normally aimed at, but what you do see there is that the cost of that has come down 30%. One thing that I think is worth looking at is the size of the retrofitted buildings. Obviously, what you're doing when you're adding a new building envelope is increasing the dimensions of the property. So in some instances, especially in the UK, we're going to have to look at perhaps how planning legislation could be changed to allow larger building footprints. And here you can see the financials of the program, so how much these prototypes have cost in the Netherlands. So you see the first prototype out in Roosendaal in 2010, that was costing upwards of €130,000, so completely unaffordable for retrofit. And this decreases down to somewhere in the region of €45,000 in 2013-2014. Where we'd be looking to get this to in the United Kingdom is somewhere below that, somewhere in the region of €35,000, €40,000 would be the sort of target. That's roughly where we see it's being cost optimal, though we're testing financial models at the moment. I think where we feel that Energy Strong UK works is because it delivers results whilst being an attractive offer for contractors, housing associations and residents, so everyone gets involved with it. Obviously, as mentioned before, unlike the existing retrofit models, Energy Strong uses an energy performance contract. This guarantees the performance of the improvements over a long period, provides the financial security not just to the property owner who knows that the product will perform to an expected level, but it also helps clarify things for the resident as well. And this outcome-based approach to procurement, this helps move away from things like these sort of really detailed contracting, and this helps to create an environment where essentially the housing association is saying, here are the top-line parameters, net zero energy, 1 week, attractive. Go away and innovate and come back with a solution that meets the cost and these broad lines. And this helps to drive down the cost of it. What we're looking to replicate in the UK is to organise this sort of high-volume demand that we've seen in the Netherlands. Initially, we're looking at this from social housing organisations, and then this will facilitate finances and government to tune financing products regulations towards the new product that we've created, and also challenges the building sector to start this ambitious innovation process to deliver the proposition. Housing associations, as part of this, will get guaranteed income to cover their investment as tenants' energy bills are transformed into an energy plan that's paid to the landlord. As mentioned, the energy plan is set at the same amount as the tenant's previous energy bill, meaning that they're protected from future energy rises, so they're not going to underheat their homes. And each house, as part of the process of industrialisation, is measured separately and the solutions are customised. So this means, again, that we're avoiding issues around snagging and delays. It also ensures things can be fitted quickly. So what we feel is that Energy Strong can deliver a significant market transformation product for the benefit of what we call UK PLC by aggregating demand for new, high-performing renovation products. It can also create an entire new market sector. As Julianne touched on, there's a lot of employment in this. It's an employment-heavy industry. It has to be domestically based to a certain extent. And the industrialization will lead to innovation, reducing the cost of these solutions, making them the norm rather than the exception. And the resulting social value and economic uplift of entire neighbourhoods also have positive impacts on communities, employment, but also health and affordability of households. In the UK, we've seen wholesale domestic energy prices rise 98.5% over the last decade. If we see that again, we're going to be seeing, we're not at the level that sort of the Netherlands and Germany are at, because we've long had access to North Sea oil, but we're getting to the stage where energy bills can most likely outstrip rent costs within sort of 10 to 15 years. So this is just a quick piece of data research that shows the number of eligible dwellings for this. So the houses that we think would be most suitable. I won't go into too much detail around the locations, but I think the important thing you can see is this figure that I'll highlight, which is 2.2 million social housing dwellings we reckon are available that would fit this type in the UK. So there's a very large number of properties that could fit the basic archetypes that we talked about, the sort of post-1950s, no more than 4 stories high, and either terraces or low-rise. And then moving on, what we're looking at doing in the UK is I think Julianne mentioned, we've recently been awarded a grant by Horizon 2020. This is split across the Netherlands, the United Kingdom and France, and we're looking at rolling this approach out. Where we are at the moment is we're looking at the financial feasibility of this in the UK, so exploring exactly how that quite complex financial model will work. We're also we've set up Energy Strong UK as an organisation. It's now a constituted organisation, as a board of directors. Has some independent financing, most of it coming from the Horizon 2020 grant, but some from membership and other parties. And it's basically going to start exploring the supply chain integration and cost optimization, the revenue model, the planning framework, and the archetypes for the first test volumes. And the key milestones that we're looking at is proof that this technical solution is deliverable in the UK. While we think it is highly promising, we want to make sure that what's worked for the Netherlands can work for us. Confidence that the solutions can be implemented within existing energy regulation. Confidence that solutions are compliant with local planning control, and an adaptation of the Dutch financial model to the UK market. And our French counterparts will be exploring very similar issues to this. How are we going about doing that? We're working with the UK government to ensure that the policy priorities are shaped to make the market environment for Energy Strong as conducive as possible. So this is things about the pay-as-you-save scheme on the energy bill, those sort of areas. We also want to try and get, and this is a common request in UK policy, much more certainty on what's been a changing policy framework for our housing providers to address there's a number of challenges around. We would also like support for core capacity. This is less crucial now. We have money from Horizon 2020, but we'd still like additional support from government. And crucially, we also want to broker a mass volume deal to incentivize construction companies' supply chain to develop and implement these solutions and make the product viable free from any grant or subsidy. So that is a summary of Energy Strong. There's a lot of press releases and other areas you can get hold of, so please feel free to take a look at those. I'm going to click back and see if I can see if there's any questions.